They thought he was a pet, until he beat their champion. In seconds. The audience chamber of the Varelian matriarch, Sovereign Lysara, was heavy with the electric tang of ozone, mingled artfully with the lush perfume of alien blossoms, a scent designed to unsettle and remind every courtier present that they were in the presence of power, and not their own. At the dais, Lysara reclined with the casual poise of one born to rule. Her fingers, long and iridescent, shimmered through a spectrum from teal to rose as they threaded idly through the dark hair of the man kneeling at her side. A human, Ethan. His presence as jarring and incongruous as a starship crash in a tranquil glade. He remained still, his eyes downcast, his role clear. A living curiosity from a backward planet, displayed as a harmless pet for her amusement. But the amusement in the chamber was brittle, tested by the arrival of Commander Theric and his entourage. Theric's armor bore fresh scars, and his eyes, cold as the void, swept the assembly with open challenge. At his side stood his daughter Sira, taller than most Varelians, her posture rigid, every line of her body honed for battle. The crowd shifted, anticipation rising like a storm. Majestic Lysara, Tharic began, his voice deep and edged with mockery. Your court overflows with the delicate, the peculiar. I wonder if you remember what true strength looks like. Lysara's lips curled, violet eyes glinting. I recall well enough, Tharic. You bring your daughter to remind me? Sira stepped forward, her heavy blade slung easily across her back. Champion of House Tharic, she announced, her voice ringing, unbeaten. Perhaps it is time for a contest, Tharic suggested, letting the words hang like a threat. A demonstration of prowess, my daughter against your best. A ripple of tension moved through the courtiers. Lysara's fingers stilled in Ethan's hair. Her gaze flickered, cool and unreadable. You wish for a display of might, Commander? Are you so eager to see your house shamed? Theric laughed, a rough, mocking sound. Or perhaps it is your house at risk, Sovereign. I hear you favor the strange and the weak. Like this human. He nodded at Ethan, dismissive. Let us see if your taste for novelty extends to matters of survival. Lysara's jaw tightened. She glanced at her own guards, each one lethal, each one too valuable to risk on Theric's stage. To refuse would be weakness. To play by Theric's rules was to lose. Her hand settled on Ethan's shoulder, possessive and suddenly calculating. Very well, she said. My champion will be Ethan. A moment of stunned silence, then laughter erupted, sharp and cruel. The courtiers leaned forward, some whispering in disbelief, others openly jeering. Sira grinned, flexing her gauntleted fingers. Is this a joke, Sovereign? A pet against a warrior? Lysara's voice cut through the noise, hard as obsidian. My word is law. The contest will proceed. The arena was readied with ritual swiftness, a ring of pale sand beneath the high-domed ceiling, lit by cold white beams that made every shadow stark. Sira entered first, greeted by the cheers of her house, her blade gleaming as she raised it to the crowd. Her armor caught the light, each panel etched with victories. Ethan followed, barefoot and bare-armed, his expression calm, almost detached. The laughter resumed, louder now, sure of the outcome. Lysara watched from her throne, every muscle taut beneath her jeweled mantle. A gong sounded. Sira wasted no time, launching forward with the lethal grace of a hunting cat. Her blade sang through the air, a downward arc meant to end the match before it began. But Ethan was already moving, sidestepping with uncanny precision, letting the blade thud harmlessly into sand. He watched her, eyes narrowed, tracking every shift in her weight. Sira snarled and pressed her advantage, thrusting with a speed few in the court could follow. Ethan ducked beneath her swing, pivoted, and with a blur of motion, struck the inside of her elbow. Metal clanged, and her sword arm spasmed, the weapon clattering from her grasp. Before she could recover, Ethan swept her legs with a low surgical kick. Syrah crashed down, choking on dust, and in the next instant Ethan was on her, his forearm across her throat, pinning her with effortless efficiency. The chamber fell utterly silent. All that could be heard was Syrah's ragged breathing and the faint hum of the palace's energy shields. Tharek's face blanched. Lysara's alien features flickered with shock, violet eyes wide as she stared at her pet. The court's mockery curdled into uneasy awe. Ethan released Syrah and rose, bowing his head to Lysara. The sovereign's gaze lingered on him, her mind racing. The game irreversibly changed. Later, in the quiet of his appointed quarters, Ethan felt the shift in the palace's mood. Where once there had been open contempt, now there was wary, measuring respect. He sat on the edge of his low cot, rolling his shoulders, when the door swept open and Lysara stormed in, her presence filling the room like a sudden storm front. "You!" she hissed, crossing the space between them in a blur. "What are you?" Her fingers trembled as she seized his chin, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You were supposed to be harmless. An oddity. Not this." Ethan held her stare, silent, the faintest smile touching his lips. Lysara fumbled at her belt, producing a torque of shimmering indigo metal. She fastened it around his neck, the metal cool and impossibly light. It was the mark of her personal guard, a symbol of status and ownership alike. Her voice, usually so precise and unflappable, trembled with something between excitement and fear. "You are mine," she declared, her breath unsteady, violet eyes burning with new, dangerous possibility. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest, the old boundaries between captor and captive dissolving in the charged silence. Nothing in the palace would ever be the same. The palace shifted uneasily around Ethan's new role. Where once he had wandered its labyrinthine halls as a curiosity, now he strode beside Lysara, always at her left, the shimmering indigo torque snug against his throat. It both bound him and bestowed new power, marking him as something between favored consort and dangerous instrument. Courtiers skirted their eyes away from him, conversation faltering in the mosaic-tiled corridors. Palace guards, once quick to ignore or mock, snapped stiff salutes as he passed, hands pressed to their chests. Lysara reveled in the discomfort that followed her every step, her lips curving in private satisfaction at the silent ripples her choice provoked. One morning, sunlight spilled golden over the secluded courtyard where Lysara summoned Ethan. The air was warm, humming with the scent of wild vine flowers coiling along ancient columns. She waited in the center, barefoot on the flagstones, her slender form shifting from rose gold to peacock blue as she stretched. "You will teach me," Lysara announced, voice imperious. "I will not be bested by my own champion." Ethan regarded her, then nodded. "Very well, Sovereign. Stand as you did yesterday. Feet apart, weight forward." She mirrored his stance, but her movements were sharper, driven by pride as much as muscle. She struck, slicing her palm through the air in a swift arc. Ethan caught her wrist mid-flight, redirecting her force. Their bodies brushed, heat flared where skin met skin. "Leverage, not brute strength," Ethan murmured, stepping close. "Use your opponent's movement." Lysara twisted, wrenching free, and attacked again, faster this time. He let her momentum carry her past, guiding her with a gentle hand to the small of her back. She spun, chest heaving, eyes bright with challenge and something more. "Why do you always yield ground?" she demanded. "Are you afraid to strike me?" "Raw strength is a storm," Ethan replied, his gaze steady. "But storms can be guided." He seized the moment, hooking her ankle with his foot and sweeping her legs from beneath her. Lysara landed hard on the sun-warmed stone, and before she could react, Ethan pinned her wrist, holding her down with just enough force to prove his point. The world stilled. Lysara's breathing was shallow, her eyes locked on his, wide and startled. "You hide yourself," she accused, her voice a whisper meant for him alone. "You fight like a shadow." Ethan's lips quirked. "Shadows shape the light, Sovereign." For a heartbeat, neither moved. The line between instructor and ruler blurred, replaced by something taut and electric. Lysara's hand lingered on his forearm, and Ethan, for the first time, did not flinch away. A servant burst into the courtyard, breathless and pale. "Majesty." "Forgive me, but Commander Theric demands audience. He is not alone." The spell shattered. Lysara stood in a single fluid motion, regal composure snapping back into place. "Summon my council. Prepare the audience hall. Ethan, with me." They strode through twisting corridors, the palace charged with anticipation. Rumors scurried ahead of them, hissing through shadowed alcoves and marbled halls. By the time they reached the chamber, a crowd had gathered. Nobles in iridescent finery, guards at rigid attention, and at their head, Commander Tharic, flanked by his house warriors in full ceremonial armor. Sira stood behind him, her arm bound in a sling, her expression thunderous. Lysara took her throne, Ethan at her side, and fixed Theric with a cool stare. "You enter my house unannounced, Commander. Explain yourself." Theric's voice boomed, filling the chamber. "I come to call you to account, Sovereign. You flout sacred tradition and insult my house." His gaze cut to Ethan, contempt sharpening every syllable. "You let an outworlder mock our ways. Do you think us too dull to see your game?" Lysara arched an elegant brow. "I played by your rules. It was your champion who lost." A low murmur rippled through the court. Theric stepped forward, fists clenched. "You pretend ignorance, but you know the cost. The trial was not some sport. It was a rite of betrothal. Your hand to my house, unity through strength." The words struck like a physical blow. Lysara's lips parted, surprise flickering over her features. Ethan's brows drew together, trying to parse the sudden shift in tone. Theric's voice grew louder, righteous fury fueling every word. "By ancient law, the victor of the trial wins the right to court the sovereign. My daughter was to claim you and unite our bloodlines. But you—" He pointed at Ethan, voice trembling with rage. "You have let this outsider steal what is ours." The court gasped. In an instant, Ethan was transformed, no longer just a symbol of Lysara's rebellion, but a catalyst for scandal and division. Nobles exchanged frantic glances, some recoiling in horror, others watching with a gleam of dangerous interest. The torque at Ethan's throat seemed heavier than ever. Lysara rose, anger and disbelief warring on her face. "You dare twist custom to serve your pride? The trial was your suggestion, Theric. If you cannot accept the outcome—" "Spare me your defiance," Theric spat. "You have broken the ancient peace. My house will not be shamed." Sira's voice rang out clear and brittle. "The outsider fought fairly. I accept my defeat, but tradition is tradition. Will you truly claim him as suitor, Sovereign?" The words hung in the air. Ethan's heart pounded, aware of every gaze fixed upon him. Lysara's eyes met his, the question unspoken but urgent. For the first time, she seemed uncertain. Tharic turned, addressing the assembly. "Hear me. Until justice is restored, House Theric will withdraw its loyalty. Let the capital tremble. If Lysara clings to her outworlder, let her rule alone, beset on all sides." A storm of voices erupted, accusations, protests, anxious questions. The fragile peace that held the city together trembled on the edge of collapse. Ethan stepped forward, voice quiet but carrying. If tradition demands a suitor, then let it be so. I will not run from what I have won. His words fell like a gauntlet, shocking the crowd into silence. Lysara placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, steadying herself as much as him. The law is the law, she declared, her voice cold as steel. And I am sovereign. You may declare vendetta, Tharek, but remember, the people watch. They tire of your feuds. Choose your next move carefully. Tharek's eyes blazed. I will not forget this insult. You have made an enemy of my house. He spun on his heel, Sira and his warriors following, their passage leaving a wake of fear and uncertainty. The court dissolved into anxious knots of whispers. Lysara dismissed the assembly with a flick of her hand and turned to Ethan, searching his face for regret or doubt. You have set the capital alight, she said, voice low, equal parts warning and wonder. Ethan met her gaze, the torque gleaming at his throat, the future uncertain but burning bright between them. The palace trembled with unrest, and somewhere far below, ancient laws shifted in their sleep. Lysara's court fractured around her like glass under sudden pressure. The audience hall, once filled with shimmering laughter and the rustle of iridescent robes, now pulsed with fury and fear. Nobles huddled in tense clusters, their eyes darting to Ethan, no longer a curiosity, but a catalyst for chaos. Traditionalists, their voices sharpened by outrage, demanded blood to restore what had been lost. It is the only way, Lord Varen spat, his silvered crest bristling. The outsider's death will appease House Theric and prove our loyalty to the old ways. Others nodded, the refrain swelling until it filled the air. Sacrifice him. End this blight upon our name. Lysara must act. Lysara stood tall in the center of the storm, her angular features unreadable, violet eyes cold with conviction. You mistake me if you believe I bend to threats, be they Theric's or your own. I will not offer Ethan's life as a balm for your wounded pride. A low growl rippled through the gathering. Lord Varen's fists clenched. You risk open war. The city will burn. So be it, Lysara replied, her words ringing with finality. Hear me now. Ethan is my chosen guardian. From this moment, any hand raised against him is an attack on me, your sovereign. Remember your oaths, or break them and face me in open defiance. The proclamation echoed through the marble chamber, quelling the boldest voices. Some shrank back, others glared with sullen resentment, but none dared challenge her outright. As the court dissolved, Lysara's gaze lingered on Ethan, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them. Not affection, not yet, but the iron bond of shared defiance. That night, the palace slept uneasily, its corridors thick with the threat of violence. Shadows pooled in every alcove, and the wind rattled the crystalline windows with the promise of storms. Ethan remained alert, moving through the suite Lysara had granted him, senses straining for the smallest anomaly. The torque around his neck felt heavier than ever, a badge of honor and a beacon for every would-be assassin. He heard the whisper of silk, a footfall too soft for any servant. He waited, breath slow as a hooded figure melted from the gloom. The blade flashed, but Ethan was faster. He caught the attacker's wrist, twisting until bones ground together, then slammed him into the wall. A second assailant surged from the shadows, dagger raised. Ethan spun, dropping low, and swept the attacker's legs from beneath him. He dispatched both with ruthless efficiency, their bodies slumping silently to the carpet. A crash split the night. A window shattered, scattering shards across the floor. A third assassin vaulted through, cloak billowing, blade drawn, and eyes wild. Lysara burst into the chamber, sword in hand, hair streaming behind her like a comet's tail. She took in the scene in a heartbeat, 2 bodies on the floor, Ethan crouched and ready, and the final attacker already lunging for her. Get back! Ethan shouted. But Lysara did not retreat. She met the assassin's blade with a clang of steel, parrying once, twice, her movements fluid but fueled by a ferocious will. Ethan closed in from behind, the two of them moving in perfect, wordless accord. The assassin spun, caught between them. For a moment it was a blur, Lysara's blade singing, Ethan's hands a blur of feints and strikes. The attacker landed a shallow cut across Lysara's shoulder. Ethan reacted instantly, disarming him with a savage twist and slamming him to the ground. Lysara drove her sword hilt into the assassin's head, ending the struggle. Silence descended, broken only by their ragged breathing. The bodies lay sprawled on the mosaic tiles, blood seeping into the cracks. Lysara let her sword clatter to the floor, her shoulders shaking. They dare invade my own chambers. Ethan checked the fallen, confirming what he already knew. Therek's mark, he said grimly, holding up a blood-stained signet. He's declared open war. Lysara's face was pale beneath its shifting hues. And you... Her eyes widened as she saw the blood on his forearm, a long slice welling crimson. You're hurt, he shrugged, suppressing a wince. Nothing serious. She stepped closer, urgency chasing away her usual reserve. Come with me. I will not have Therek claim you with poison or infection. Without waiting for protest, Lysara led him down a winding passage to her private bathing chamber, a sanctuary of steaming pools, perfumed air, and blue-veined marble. She pressed him to sit on the edge of the nearest pool, her hands sure and surprisingly gentle. Hold still, she commanded, tearing a length of silk from her robe to staunch the bleeding. Her fingers trembled only once, then steadied as she worked, dabbing the wound clean. The steam rose around them, blurring the world to just the two of them. Ethan watched her, silent as she traced the scars on his arms. Old burns, knife marks, a latticework of survival. You are marked by violence, she murmured, voice low. Every line a story. He smiled, weary. Stories I'd rather forget. She lifted her gaze to his, her mask of command slipping for the first time. Yet you survive. You do not yield, not even to me. He reached up, brushing her hand with his own. You never asked for submission, only truth. Lysara's breath caught, her eyes searching his face. For a moment, neither leader nor guardian, just two beings bound by the night's danger, raw and exposed. Her hands moved to clean his wound with water from the pool, the cloth warm and slick. The act, intimate and careful, made Ethan's pulse quicken. He took the cloth from her, gently wiping a smear of blood from her collarbone. She did not pull away. Instead, she pressed her palm to his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her touch. The silence was heavy, charged with everything they could not say. Lysara's lips parted, her voice a mere whisper. You could have let them kill me, taken your freedom. He shook his head, eyes dark. My freedom means nothing if it's bought with your life. She laughed, a sharp, fragile sound. You are a fool. Perhaps, he said, closing the space between them, but I am your fool. Their mouths met, urgent, hungry, the taste of danger still lingering on their skin. Lysara tangled her fingers in his hair, pulling him closer. He lifted her, drawing her into the steaming water, silk and armor falling away. The heat of the bath enfolded them, dissolving the boundaries of command and duty. Their bodies entwined beneath the rippling surface, each touch a question, each answer found in the press of skin and the sigh of breath. For the first time, they were equals. No sovereign, no guardian, only two souls who had risked everything and survived. They lingered there, in the cocoon of steam and candlelight, forging a silent pact, a partnership born not only of necessity, but of longing. As the water cooled around them, Lysara rested her head on Ethan's shoulder, her voice barely more than a sigh. "We face the world together now," she whispered. Ethan pressed a kiss to her brow, the promise unspoken but understood. In that moment, the fracture in the court, the storm outside, all faded away. Only the two of them remained, joined by battle, by scars, and by the fragile, reckless hope of something more. After the attack, something fundamental shifted between Lysara and Ethan. Where once there had been careful distance, of ruler to guardian, of alien to human, now there was true alliance, forged in the crucible of blood and betrayal. The palace, still humming with whispers of attempted regicide, became their war room. They moved together through its marble corridors as equals, no longer separated by rank or custom. The torque at Ethan's throat was no longer a leash, but a symbol of partnership. In the strategy hall, beneath the high, vaulted dome, they bent together over glowing maps projected onto glass and air. The council of advisors watched from the shadows, their eyes wary, some with arms folded in silent resistance. The holographic landscape shimmered, a web of city streets, subterranean tunnels, and vulnerable junctions. Ethan's finger traced a flickering line. "Here," he said, voice measured, "and here. These lower tunnels. Ancient. Forgotten. Your records only note them as drainage, but they run deep beneath the palace." Lord Varen, his voice dripping skepticism, scoffed. "Those passages are sealed. No army could—" "Sealed centuries ago," Ethan interrupted, meeting Varen's gaze with steady calm. "But I've explored their lengths. Your adversaries will not come through the main gates. They'll strike from below, emerging where your guard is weakest." The council murmured, discomfort rippling through the chamber. Lysara straightened, her presence radiating certainty. "Ethan speaks with authority. His eyes see what ours cannot. You will listen." Varen's lips thinned, but he offered no further objection. One by one, the others nodded, some with open reluctance, others with the dawning recognition that the outsider was now indispensable. Ethan outlined his plan, his words crisp and direct. "We reroute the energy flows, create false corridors of light to mislead invaders. Here." He tapped a note on the map. "We set traps. Not brute force, but pressure plates, smoke, alarms triggered by weight rather than movement. Your palace guard must be retrained to move quietly, to think in layers, not lines." Lysara listened, absorbing his every word. "Show us," she commanded. He did. For days, Ethan moved through the palace like a shadow, personal guard in tow. He led them through drills in the abandoned cellars, teaching them to anticipate ambushes, to set and evade their own snares. He broke down their rigid forms, replacing ceremony with adaptability. At first, the Varelians bristled at his brusque corrections, but Lysara's presence at every session, her willingness to learn alongside them, silenced any protest. "Why do we move in circles, not ranks?" one guard grumbled. "Because an enemy expects lines," Ethan replied. "Surprise is our weapon." He showed them how to fall silent in seconds, how to blend into shadow, how to use the curves and echoes of the palace itself to confuse and trap. He taught them hand signals, simple, effective, unclouded by ritual. Lysara herself practiced by his side, failing, learning, and rising again with each attempt. One evening, as the sun painted the city in molten gold, Lysara watched her guards creep through the practice tunnels, nearly invisible. She turned to Ethan, her voice low with grudging admiration. "You have changed them." He smiled, exhaustion softening the lines of his face. "No, you have. They follow your example. You chose to listen." In the flickering lamplight, the last defenses of rank and tradition seemed to melt away. Lysara reached for his hand, fingers interlacing with his. You make it easy to choose. Their days were spent in tense planning, their minds in lockstep, anticipating, calculating, outwitting every move the enemy might make. At night, the weight of survival melted from their shoulders, replaced by something gentler, sweeter. In the hush of Lysara's chambers, away from prying eyes and the burden of command, they found solace in each other's arms. Lysara, who had known only the cold politics of power and the harsh discipline of war, discovered an unfamiliar, thrilling tenderness. Ethan's touch was deliberate, reverent. His hands, so lethal in battle, became instruments of comfort. In the dark, he traced the shifting colors of her skin, marveling at the warmth beneath. She pressed her lips to his scars, learning the geography of his pain, and in her embrace, Ethan found a peace he had not believed possible. One night, after hours spent adjusting the palace's energy grid, Ethan slumped onto the bed, sweat streaking his brow. Lysara joined him, her robes falling away in a cascade of blue and rose. You are wounded, she said softly, fingers brushing the fresh bruise on his shoulder. He caught her hand, kissing her palm. Not when I'm with you. She smiled, the first true, unguarded smile he had seen. In the morning, we will be sovereign and guardian again. But tonight, we are simply ourselves. Their mouths met, slow and lingering, the urgency of battle giving way to the languor of trust. Lysara curled against him, her head on his chest, his heart steady beneath her ear. For the first time, she allowed herself to rest, to be vulnerable. Ethan cradled her as though she were both precious and unbreakable. In the hours before dawn, they spoke in quiet murmurs, of childhoods lost to expectation, of the loneliness that comes with command, of dreams that felt impossibly distant until now. Does it frighten you? Lysara asked, her voice barely a breath. Trusting you? Ethan replied. No, only the thought of losing this. She pressed closer, her arm curling around his waist. Then let us hold it, as long as we can. When morning came, they rose as partners. The council, once fractious, now deferred to Lysara with new respect, wary of the human at her side. Together, Lysara and Ethan finalized the defense. Hidden sentries in the tunnels, alarms woven into the palace's heartbeat, decoy patrols to draw attackers into dead ends. The city's tension mounted, but for the first time, hope threaded through the uncertainty. Ethan and Lysara stood side by side on the palace balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the encroaching darkness. War loomed, but neither felt alone. Their hands brushed, fingers entwining for just a moment, a silent promise exchanged. We are ready, Lysara said, gaze fixed on the horizon. Ethan nodded. Let them come. We face them together. Together, they braced for the coming storm, minds and hearts united by purpose, no longer alone. The alarms blared, a discordant wail that echoed through the marble bones of the palace, shattering the fragile hush of pre-dawn. Ethan jolted awake, the sound twisting his gut. In the corridor, boots thundered and voices called out in rapid Varelian. He was on his feet in an instant, already reaching for the blade at his side. Lysara appeared, robed in armor the color of storm clouds, eyes shining violet and fierce. It begins, she said, voice calm despite the chaos swirling around them. He nodded, tension coiling through every muscle. They're inside. Therek's men are coming through the tunnels. Lysara did not hesitate. Together they ran for the audience chamber, now transformed into a fortress. They passed squads of palace guards slipping into their hidden positions, each one nodding to Ethan, their faces set in grim determination. Gone were the rigid ranks of old. The guards melted into alcoves, crouched behind pillars, poised above the archways with crossbows and energy rifles. The very walls seemed to hum with nervous anticipation. Ethan and Lysara burst into the heart of the palace just as the chamber's grand doors groaned under a battering ram. Dust sifted from the mosaics above. Lysara swept her gaze over the room, satisfied at the readiness. Traps armed, guard concealed, Ethan at her side. The doors exploded inward. Therek's shock troops surged in, armored in crimson and black, expecting a swift, glorious slaughter. Instead, the chamber erupted in chaos. Crossbows fired from behind drapes, bolts flashing through the air. Smoke grenades burst, cloaking the Varelian guards' movements in swirling fog. Therek's warriors stumbled, blinded, and triggered hidden pressure plates. Nets dropped from the ceiling, snares cinched ankles, and the floor itself buckled to reveal concealed pits. "Left flank!" Ethan barked, eyes scanning the haze. "Cover the sovereign!" Lysara moved in harmony with him, her own commands crisp and unwavering. "Hold the high arches. Drive them to the center!" The defenders shifted, herding Therek's forces into deadly crossfire. The attackers, trained in open warfare, floundered in the confined chaos, their numbers blunted by ingenuity and discipline. Ethan darted from cover to cover, loosing arrows and signaling with sharp gestures, while Lysara directed the defenders, her voice ringing with authority. A knot of enemy soldiers broke from the melee, seeking to flank the defenders through a side corridor. Ethan spotted them and sprinted after, boots pounding the marble, blade ready. The passage twisted, torches guttering in the sudden rush of bodies. There, in the half-light, Ethan met Therek himself. Armor battered, eyes burning with battle madness. "Outworlder!" Therek growled, drawing his blade. "You have tainted our blood and stolen our honor. I will end you." Ethan matched the commander's glare. "You'll find me harder to break than tradition." Therek lunged, blade arcing for Ethan's throat. Ethan dodged, parried, the clang of steel ringing through the corridor. Therek was relentless, each blow fueled by rage and humiliation, but Ethan adapted, shifting his stance, giving ground only to find a new angle. Sweat stung his eyes. Therek pressed harder, forcing Ethan against the wall, the blade biting into his shoulder. Ethan twisted, rolling free, and swept Therek's legs. The commander crashed to the floor. Before Therek could recover, Ethan kicked the weapon from his grasp and pinned him with a knee to the chest, blade poised at his throat. "It's over, Therek," Ethan said, breathless. "Surrender." Therek's eyes blazed, but he spat blood and went limp, pride finally broken. Meanwhile, chaos still raged in the audience chamber. Sira, her armor scorched and battered, broke through the defenders, her blade flashing as she sought Lysara amid the tumult. She screamed above the din, "Face me, sovereign! If I cannot reclaim my house's honor, I will at least die with it." Lysara turned, sword drawn, her face calm and resolute. "This ends now, Sira. You want a duel? Then fight." They met in the center of the chamber, steel ringing against steel. Sira attacked with brute force, each blow meant to shatter, to crush. But Lysara remembered Ethan's lessons. She parried, yielding when pressed, letting Sira's momentum drive her forward and off balance. She danced back, sidestepping, eyes cool and calculating. Sira's blade slashed, a wild, desperate stroke. Lysara ducked, spinning behind, and swept Sira's feet, sending her sprawling. Sira rolled to her knees, fury twisting her face. "You're nothing without your human's tricks," Sira spat. Lysara's answer was a swift riposte, catching Sira's blade and twisting it free. She pressed her advantage, feinting, waiting for Sira's anger to open a fatal gap. It came, a reckless charge. Lysara let the force pass her by, pivoted and leveled her sword at Sira's throat. "It is not strength that wins," Lysara declared, her voice echoing through the chamber. "It is the will to adapt, yield." Sira hesitated, breath ragged, then dropped her blade, defeated. The watching guards, friend and foe alike, absorbed the lesson in silence. Ethan returned, dragging a battered Theric into the hall. The sight of their fallen commander broke the last resistance. Theric's warriors lowered their weapons, many kneeling in surrender. The palace guards quickly secured the prisoners, binding wrists and tending wounds, the lines between enemy and ally dissolving in the aftermath. Lysara sheathed her blade, chest heaving, and crossed to Ethan. Blood streaked her arm, dust streaked his brow, but their eyes met with shared relief and hard-won triumph. "We did it," Ethan said, voice raw but steady. Lysara managed a smile, luminous and fierce. Together, always. The palace was battered, but still standing. The audience chamber, once a stage for spectacle and intrigue, was now marked by the scars of battle, but filled with the survivors of a realm preserved. All around them, the guard rallied, patching wounds and righting overturned banners. The defeated Theric and Sira were led away under careful watch. Lysara turned to the crowd of nobles and soldiers who had witnessed it all. "Let this be our new beginning," she proclaimed, voice ringing with authority and hope. Strength lies not in tradition alone, but in unity and in change. This day, we are not divided by blood or origin. We are one realm, preserved by the courage of many. The survivors cheered, relief flooding the great hall. Ethan stood at Lysara's side, hand brushing hers, their partnership undeniable, human and Varelian, strategy and strength. They had braved the storm, and together, they had prevailed. In the restored hall, Lysara stood before her court, every inch the sovereign reborn. The light from the crystal vaults glinted off her ceremonial armor, plates of iridescent metal that rippled from midnight violet to dawn pink with each breath she took. Around her, the air was tense with anticipation, every eye fixed on her as she faced the reckoning born of war. Where chaos and blood had stained these stones, now peace, fragile, hard-won, hung in the balance. At the center of the chamber, Tharic and Sira knelt in chains. Their heads were bowed, the proud lines of their faces drawn and pale. Silence thickened as the nobles assembled. Some clung to the old ways, others had thrown their lot in with Lysara's vision of unity and change. Soldiers lined the walls, bearing the new sigil, two hands, human and Varelian, clasped in alliance. Lysara's voice cut through the hush, ringing with authority and a deep, measured sorrow. "Tharic of House Tharic, Sira, once champion, you are brought before this court for your crimes, insurrection, attempted regicide, and the bloodshed of your own kin." Whispers rippled across the room. Tradition demanded blood for blood. The old code was clear. Betrayal must be answered with death. But Lysara's gaze was steady, unwavering. She walked the length of the dais, her armor catching the firelight, and addressed her court. "Many of you expect execution," she began, her tone challenging. "You would see me wield the sword of vengeance as my ancestors did, and call it justice. But if we are to have a future, if Varelia is to endure, then we must break the cycle that nearly destroyed us." She paused, letting the silence gather weight. "I decree exile for Tharic and Sira. Their names and titles are forfeit. Their lands and holdings are seized for the realm. They will leave this world, never to return." A gasp rippled through the nobles, outrage from some, relief from others. Tharic looked up, pride still flickering in his eyes. "Mercy is weakness," he spat. Lysara shook her head, her iridescent fingers curling into a fist. "You are wrong. Mercy is its own strength. Vengeance is easy, but it is wisdom and restraint that build lasting peace." She swept her gaze across the chamber, meeting each set of eyes. "Hear me. True power is not just force, but adaptation, wisdom, and recognizing value where others see none. The old ways brought us to the brink. Today, we forged something new. The hall fell silent, shocked, uncertain, but listening. Even the most hardened traditionalists felt the tide turning. Lysara turned to the captain of the guard. See to their exile. Let the sentence be swift and just. As Tharek and Sira were led away, Lysara's shoulders relaxed. The chamber began to shift, a sense of hope rising like sunlight after storm. She scanned the crowd, searching for the one face that mattered most. Ethan stood at the foot of the dais, his dark hair tousled, still bearing the marks of battle, dust on his clothes, a thin cut at his temple, and the indigo torque at his neck. He looked up at Lysara, his eyes steady and open. She descended the stairs, the hush in the hall deepening with every step. Nobles watched, confused and spellbound, as she stopped before Ethan. Without a word, she reached up and unclasped the torque. It fell away, clattering softly to the marble. Lysara cupped his face in her hands, drawing him close. She kissed him, openly, fully, before the assembled court. The hall gasped as one, the act shattering 1,000 years of custom in a heartbeat. She turned to the audience, voice rising with passion and certainty. He is not my pet. He is not just my champion. He is my consort. His mind is my counsel. His strength my shield. Together, we are the future of Virelia. The silence lasted for a long, breathless moment. Then applause and shouts of approval broke out, rippling through the hall. Some wept, some cheered, and some simply bowed their heads, accepting the new order. Ethan's hand found Lysara's as she turned back to him, their fingers entwining, the promise of partnership now unbreakable and undeniable. For the first time, he stood as her equal before all of Virelia, their shared triumph and defiance written in every glance, every touch. That night, the city shimmered with celebration and new beginnings. In the quiet of Lysara's private chambers, the sounds of the world receded. The moon hung low and bright, casting silver over the palace. Lysara stepped onto her balcony, the cool night air stirring the banners overhead. Ethan joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist, drawing her back against his chest. She leaned into him, her armor traded for a simple gown, her iridescent skin glowing softly in the moonlight. The city sprawled below them, alive with hope and the hush of possibility. For the first time in memory, there was no dread lurking at the edges of her mind. A throne for two, Ethan whispered, his breath warm against her ear. She turned in his arms, violet eyes searching his face, her own features unmasked and tender. You taught me a new way to be strong, she said, her voice trembling with gratitude and awe, not through fear, not through force, but by trusting and by changing. Ethan smiled, tracing the curve of her cheek. You always were strong, Lysara. You just needed to see it. She covered his hand with hers, their fingers weaving together. Alien and human, sovereign and consort, survivors and dreamers. Together they gazed out over the rooftops, the horizon brightening with the promise of dawn. United by battle, tempered by love, they stood ready for whatever might come, knowing, at last, that they had each other. That's the end of the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.